This is how your kit's going to arrive, in a bunch of boxes. Unpack your core Recon kit and verify the contents with the instruction manual.
Before you start the installation, it's important to assess what you've got. In this case, we've got some kind of an aftermarket spacer, some sort of a leveling kit already there, and that means we don't have the stock stud ring, so we're going to have to order that from the Dodge dealer. Down here, we've got an end link that's broken. It's some kind of aftermarket part, and we'll replace that with the stock part.
The first step in disassembly and one of the last steps in reassembly is to take this top bolt out of the track bar. And one tip to make that a lot easier is to take the nut off the back, loosen it a little bit, and have an assistant slowly move the wheels left and right as you pull it out. And as we do that, you can actually remove this bolt by hand. You'll need a jack and two jack stands. Take your jack stands and put them on the frame right here. A good tip on how to get your tie rods out is to hammer the housing and not the ball joint itself. Because we're replacing the suspension and the steering, we pulled off the steering linkage and the sway bar. Take the inboard nuts off the shock mount first and then take the outboard nut off. You can take the shock mount off with an air tool and it makes it easier to pull the shock straight up. On the passenger side, you don't need to take the nut off. You can just take the shock mount nuts off and pull it straight up. Before you drop the axle down to remove the coil, make sure you take this brake line mount off so you don't stretch the brake lines. With the axle dropped down, now you can remove these stock weak sister coils. So this is the core coil and your stock coil. A lot of people are concerned when they see a coil that looks like this because it's thick and it's got a lot of coils in it. But a coil is a lever, and the fewer coils that it has, like the stock coil, the more rough it's going to ride. Core coils are handed, so make sure you select the appropriate coil for the side that you're working on. To make installing your coil easier, we use tape and tape the stud ring in place before we move the coil into position. Make sure the coil isolator is in place, and then it's just a manhandling job to get it in there. That was too easy. That's about right. Okay, rotate it so you got clearance there, and then you want to flex it with your hand. That's what the 1/2 inch of pressure is for on the top. When installing your shock after you've mounted it to the shock mount, a couple things you want to look out for here. Make sure that the reservoir faces forward towards the part of the truck, and also that the bottom shock mount is aligned with the reservoir tube. And then once you have that set up, just go ahead and drop it in. This is the reservoir mount. Put it on the outboard stud right here, like this, to cut a little piece of the fender well out. Okay, so we've already installed the coil on the driver's side, and one thing that's different between the driver and the passenger side is that on the driver's side, you need to drop the shock into place before you mount the shock mount to the shock. Take a piece of 3/8 inch hose that you can buy anywhere and cut it in half, kind of like I'm starting to do here. So when you place the rubber sleeve, put it in place, just slide it up so it goes all the way up to the top where it connects to the shock body itself, and then we're going to use 2 zip ties to hold it in place.
This is what the reservoir hose protection looks like from the top.
And this is how it looks when you've got your coil and your shock and your reservoir mounted on the passenger side. Okay, now we're finishing up our suspension installation and tightening the Allen bolts on the core billet drop block for the sway bar. Once you've finished installing your front suspension, don't forget to reattach your front brake lines. Okay, so we've got our 2008 and up steering installed and our Fox steering stabilizer installed.